Hi, everyone. I'm Ken,
Woo.
and this is another virtual author event. Today, we are talking about Max's picnic book with Max Halley. I got it right.
Close enough.
Okay. I overthought that. Max owns Max's Sandwich Shop in North London. This is his second book. His first book, Max's Sandwich Shop. Do you have it right there? It's a bestseller, international bestseller. And talking with Max today is someone who I think knows about eating on the run, on the road, where I've eaten with him in various places that doesn't necessarily need a table or silverware. So we have Mr. Zach Brooks, the general manager of Smorgasburg, LA. Hi, Zach. Zach, I feel like Zach is going to play the straight man to this charade that we're about to have.
Yeah.
So
well, I was going to say, I mean, the fact that you didn't use the word genius in your introduction to Max, I feel like
come on,
offensive to his work. I mean, sandwich genius. I think it all goes. I mean, I'm just saying I'd be angry if I were you, Max. I'd be upset.
Consider me extremely upset.
I know. I mean, are we starting? Should we start? Did you have more?
Yeah, I'm just gonna let everybody know, if you haven't tuned in with us before, if you have a question for Max or Zach, or about anything, honestly, these guys can give expert advice on anything, even other than sandwiches. You please put them in the Q&A, and we'll get to those a little bit later on. But yeah, we're just going to continue this international chat here with Zach and Max.
And I will be very happy to field any sausage-related queries that might come up at any moment.
Wait, sausages is fourth on my list of questions. Don't jump ahead.
Okay,
I got a whole yeah. We're going to spend a lot of time on sausages.
Excellent.
So I'm glad Ken showed the first book, because the first book is just it's an incredible insight into your clearly insane brain.
Yeah.
And how it works. The way you put together sandwiches, it is genius. Genius is really the only way.
Yeah, I mean, it's very considered. It always seems very casual, but it is, it is considered. I do have this theory, right? That is how I come up with them. Hot, cold, sweet, sour, crunchy, soft. This is the secret of deliciousness. And what goes, all of those elements are present in every sandwich we have ever served in my sandwich shop.
Well, you can tell the thought that goes into it. Like, it's not just a bunch of shit put on top. It is a bunch of shit put on top. But
yeah, of course.
It's
everything is, right?
And I mean, it's which sort of brings me to my first question. Like, it's sort of obvious. Like, you had a sandwich shop, you put out a sandwich cookbook. It's a no-brainer. It's an amazing introduction to you and your brain and your sandwiches. Ken and I were talking about how I can't wait to go to London and try, specifically the ham. Ham, egg, and chips? Is
ham, egg, and chips? Yeah,
which is like the classic. Which, you see that and you're like, all right, but then, first ingredient, ham hocks. It's like, okay, wait a second.
Yeah.
You're talking about something,
and that's like, this is a great place for us to start. So why that sandwich? I don't know. If you go to any English countryside pub, the first thing, apart from probably a prawn sandwich, that you will find on the menu is ham, egg, and chips, and like slices of ham, 2 fried eggs, and fries. And
nothing wrong with that.
At the time when I planned to open my sandwich shop, the sandwich in England was already like years behind the sandwich in America. And so the initial problem with my idea of kind of ramping up the sandwich a bit was that how could I persuade people in England, or specifically in London, that a sandwich was something that could be a meal, not something that came in a plastic packet from a supermarket, and especially how could I sell them at night? Because everyone thinks of sandwiches in England as a completely lunchtime thing. And so I thought that the first place that I should start with was the kind of archetypal, classless British meal. And that if I could figure out how to turn something that we all think of as a complete plate of food into a sandwich, that it would be much easier for people to perceive or begin to perceive sandwiches as meals. And so it seemed like the kind of natural place to start was with the classic pub lunch, hammock and chips. But then, of course, it's like sliced ham. It's a bit deli sandwich vibe for me. And I wanted to get away from the kind of sliced cold meats aspect of the sandwich world and more into like hot cooked stuff, because I wanted them to be dinner, everything had to be hot. And so normally really just your eggs and your chips are hot, but that doesn't really work in the context of a sandwich. Like chips in the English way in a sandwich are a bit soggy for a sandwich, And so I turned the chips into allumettes, like shoestring fries. I kept the fried egg. Instead of doing slices of ham, I braised ham hocks. So we just cooked them overnight because we were so busy right from the start. And then in the morning, we pick the meat down, we pack it back into the ham stock. And when someone ordered a sandwich, we'd heat up the ham hock in a spoonful of the ham stock so that we were like ramping everything up. And like we made our own bread, which was extremely unusual in the sandwich market. Like most people are buying bread. And I was just so sick of, you're gonna have to excuse me, but fucking sourdough, that it's like sourdough. I don't care what anyone says. Sourdough is shit for sandwiches. It's like the fermentation is too slow. The carbon dioxide that's produced by the fermentation, because it ferments so slowly, the bubbles in the bread are enormous. And it's like, I wanted a bread with a quick fermentation so that there's lots of tiny little bubbles creating like a mesh or a sponge that could soak up all my hot, hammy goo into the bread without losing its structural integrity. And I wanted to be able to condiment appropriately, which you cannot do in sourdough. You just end up like with your hands covered in mayonnaise. And like, anyway, sorry, I'm just getting into like my anti-sourdough rant, which it has gone on long enough already.
I mean, the word that comes to my mind is preach.
Preach, brother.
I mean, yeah. I can't get hot hammy goo out of my head.
No, indeed. Which brings me on to another one of my what I consider one of my other greatest inventions. What was it? Everyone has something they can go to their grave proud of. Mine is definitely gravy mayonnaise. And like when we did a beef sandwich, now for kind of sustainability reasons, we've actually moved to using mutton instead of beef in the sandwiches at the sandwich shop. But regardless, the cooking method is the same. And what I started doing was in the morning when I'd come in and I'd take our beef trays at the gastros out of the oven, and I just realized, like, hang on, we got not that much meat and loads of goo. And what are we going to do with it? And I was just like, how can I get this delicious beef braising liquor into the sandwich? And I don't know what happened. I just had a moment where I was like, oh my God, hang on. We can boil it down and mix that into mayonnaise. And so like all our beef or now mutton sandwiches all have gravy mayonnaise. Meaty goo mixed into mayonnaise.
I mean, don't be shy. You are a mayonnaise aficionado, a mayonnaise. I mean, you are mayonnaise.
I am one of the great mayonnaises.
which makes sense that, I mean, it makes sense that you would write a picnic book because, I mean, mayonnaise
Exactly.
is a big,
mayonnaise is,
it's a big
I
part of the
always
book.
think that in the context of picnics or sandwiches, personally, I do not consider mayonnaise a condiment. I consider it a mother sauce, a cornerstone of a benchmark on which all other things are founded. I don't want to know how delicious anyone thinks anything is. I want to know how delicious they think it is once they've dunked it into mayonnaise, because then we can properly ascertain the level of something's deliciousness.
You have a part of the book devoted to things you can mix in mayonnaise.
Indeed. Things that people might not have thought of that can be mixed
like
in, which is basically, and there is a reason for that. Like in the context of sandwiches, like mustard for me in England is a much punchier, stronger, more powerful condiment than for a lot of America. And I think when you're using French's mustard or something like that, you can kind of have some carefree abandon with the application of that mustard within the context of a sandwich or a hot dog or whatever it may be. English mustard, if you tried to do that, you're going to blow the front of your face off. So when I was trying to figure out how, and also English mustard is really thick. And so it's like actually really hard to.
What is it? It's a horseradish mustard. It's a horseradish mustard.
No, it's not horseradish. It's just got a much lower water or dairy content. Like often we in England we mix mustard powder with milk to make mustard often rather than water. But yeah, it's just like almost. I mean, I hate to use the word, but drier. It's drier. It's just much finer ground mustard powder mixed into a small amount of liquid, and it burns. It has the same wasabi horseradish burn, which really isn't present in American mustard. Anyway, so I love English mustard, but I found it problematic for using in sandwiches. And so I just realized, hang on a minute, if I mix it into mayonnaise, A, it takes the edge off it a little bit, and B, it makes it much easier to apply in the context of kind of having a thing to eat a kind of a regular, sensible amount that is the same in every mouthful, rather than it being like loads of it in mouthful 1 and not enough of it in mouthful 2.
Now, is there anything that you have mixed into mayonnaise that you completely regretted?
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Insert cliche here about mistakes being the greatest things that you can learn. I don't know. I mean, really, the only context I've ever regretted anything was just throwing rice in a fryer, and deep fat fryer, and expecting something to happen, and nothing did. And that's about the only time I've ever been culinarily let down. In fact, the two mantras of my sandwich shop are: one, what is going to happen when we throw that in the deep fat fryer? And B, can you mix that into mayonnaise? You got to have principles, right? You got to have principles.
It's two amazing rules.
It's rules for happiness.
Yeah. All right. So let's take a step back. So the book, it is, it's clearly a book of how to picnic, right? I mean, but I have this sneaking suspicion that it's actually, and I know you've been talking about mayonnaise and all your, like deep fat fryer and putting together the sandwiches, but I have this suspicion that it's actually more of a Trojan horse for your picnic fan fiction, that maybe you actually just wanted to publish a book of fake picnic stories
about my heroes.
Yes. And your publisher was like,
do not tell my publisher.
And your publisher was like, this is insane. And you were like, well, what if I put some recipes around it and some picnic recipes? Then what do you think?
Yeah, and I love the idea, because the reason why I wanted to tell the stories was because I think that, so in a recipe, you can only go so far with a recipe to kind of explain how you think about something and how you see it and how you think that a thing should change. And it's like, the problem that I have is, in England, I don't know about in America, you got a much better attitude to picnicking. You got barbecues in your parks, Well played. Like we're not that well set up in England. We're useless. And when I close my eyes as an English person and I think of a picnic, you know, I'm kind of on the hill at Wimbledon eating strawberries and cream and drinking shit prosecco. And it's like that. It's like people need to remember that lunch at your desk at work, lunch on a train, lunch in, you know, dinner in the back of your mum's car in a freeway service station. These are all picnics, and these are opportunities for deliciousness that we let pass us by all too regularly. And I think that something needs to be done about that. Like these stop-off points in our, you know, the journeys of our lives or whatever, have become moments in which it is acceptable for us to be commercially exploited and, quite frankly, sold something shit to keep the wolf from the door, because, you know, it's not a picnic because it's just lunch in your car. And like that shouldn't, do you know what I mean? Something needs to be done about that. So why I wanted to tell all the stories was, and to imagine like what Hunter S. Thompson would be doing at a picnic.
Well, we should tell people who haven't gotten the book yet.
Yeah.
Each like chapter, it's divided into a bunch of different picnics.
Yeah, 16 picnics.
Yeah. Each picnic has a imaginary, a fantasy host.
Yeah. So that one that Ken's holding up there, that is Genghis Khan, Oscar Wilde, Dorothy Parker, and Bonnie Parker, who is Bonnie of Bonnie and Clyde. And we are imagining them going out for lunch together. And through the medium of these stories, it's become much easier for me to say, like, oh, well, Bonnie's brought this, or they, you know, Dorothy had this brilliant idea. Like the thermos flask, like that's a great one, because Dorothy Parker gets out a thermos flask with an ice cold Gibson martini inside it, and Genghis Khan is eating steak tartare, and Dorothy nicks one of the gherkins from his steak tartare and pops it in her Gibson martini. And I was like, this is how we should be thinking. That's how you picnic like a boss. And what we do is we kind of all picnic like suckers. Do you know what I mean? Like we picnic like suckers, and we should be picnicking like bosses. And like the thermos flask is a fantastic metaphor for what this book is about. Like, I don't know how you think about thermoses in America. In England, we close our eyes, we think of a thermos flask, and the only thing we can imagine being inside it is tea. You know?
I gotta stop you, because this part deserves an introduction, because the book has a lot of different hacks, a lot of different, ways to, like, to upgrade your picnic.
Yeah, to think about things a little differently.
But but the thermos, your uses for the thermos are, they go really beyond genius. Something. There needs to be another word for some of, the hot dog one.
Excellent.
The hot dog, I'll let you explain it, and then you can
we have a kind of sporting heroes picnic. And what they do is they bring thermos flasks full of boiling water with hot dogs in them, and they turn up in the park with potato rolls that, and I'm not saying you have to make your own potato rolls. This isn't one of those cookbooks. We all know that the truth is excellent eating is as much about shopping as it is about cooking. Be that ingredients that you then, excellent ingredients you then turn into an excellent dish, or just well purchased, savvily bought things that you can then use to make something delicious. And there's also kind of ridiculous ideas for the stuff that you could put on a hot dog. But what a fun idea. Meet up with your mates in the park, fill a thermos flask with wieners, and and crack the beers out.
And then and then you have your toppings buffet.
And you have your toppings buffet. And you think about condiments, you think about crunchy things, you think about sweet things and sour things, and you're kind of there, really. You know, be it sauerkraut and Russian dressing on a hot dog, or, you know, like me and Ben Benton, my friend who I've written these books with, who's like the best cook I know, basically, which is why I asked him to write the first book with me and why he's now, we will write all our books together forever and ever, amen. And that guy was, we were in the park and he'd give me a hot dog with prawn cocktail on top of it, and I was just like, boom, the you know, Russian dressing and frozen prawns and shredded lettuce, and I
mean,
was
it's
like,
surf and turf.
Absolutely delicious.
It's a surf and turf hot dog. What do you mean?
It's a surf and turf hot dog, and it's like, what a fun thing to have in the park. And like, and this is something else to be remembered about our dear friend, the thermos flask, that it is a miracle of modern science. There we go. That is the page of mad stuff you never thought to put in a thermos flask.
I think you need to, I think if you're going to do one, I think you should do the carbonara, because aside from, I mean, the hot dog, the recipe, that recipe is a kind of mashup of carbonara or cacio e pepe, depending on which way you'd like to go. But we all know that once you've got the kind of, at the end of that, the later stages of that, of cooking either of those dishes, there is the incorporation of pasta water to create that kind of cheesy and eggy, in the case of carbonara, kind of, quite frankly, sloppy deliciousness. And that a thermos flask is a fantastic way to amalgamate gluten from the water and thicken your sauce. And so, yeah, we're talking about like blanching slightly under pasta, chucking it into a thermos flask, throwing some, you know, bits of bacon, guanciale, whatever your kind of attitude to how authentic carbonara needs to be is, or loads of pecorino and pepper in the case of cacio e pepe, and just stick it all in the thermos flask, put the lid on, and, you know, pretend you're at the Hyde Park Hotel or whatever, shaking up someone's, you know, Cosmopolitan or whatever it is. And these are unexpectedly delicious dishes that you never thought you could eat out of a Tupperware in the back of a car. And you can have carbonara. And it's like, all you need is a fork, an empty Tupperware, and a thermos flask with the gear in it. And like, tortellini and brodo is another one of my favorites, because in England at the supermarket for like £1 or even less than £1, you can buy cans of beef consomme. So, and you buy like, they're even ambient, like they don't have to be in the fridge, these packets of sort of tortellinis of, you know, with whatever, like ricotta and spinach or whatever in them. And all you need to do, literally, before you go to work, is heat up a can of beef consomme in a saucepan, tip it into a thermos flask, tip the tortellinis in, put the lid on, tortellini and brodo for lunch. And like, that is picnicking like a boss. And this is what I want this book to do, to enable and help us all to think about lunch on the hoof, lunch on the fly, with a bit more aplomb, you know, and not just to think of it. It's like, if you don't, an allegedly innovative approach to hummus does not make a picnic a picnic. Like, do you know what I'm saying? And you should be thinking about tortellini and brodo. Now that makes a picnic a picnic. And also balls of ice cream. You know, the thermos keeps things frozen. I've got these beautiful big Stanley thermoses. They keep ice cold things, ice cold, for 7 hours. You could put a Snickers ice cream in there and eat it 7 hours later and it is still cold. Like, it's still frozen. And it's like, no, why has no one done this before? Honestly, if I don't get some kind of sponsorship of that bloody thermos company after this, I'm going to kill myself. But it's just ridiculous. Like, none of us have kind of thought about this enough, and no one said, oi, why aren't you guys doing stuff like this? And the idea a bit like, for what the sandwich was in England, I wrote that book to say, like, fuck all that. Like, the sandwich can be way more than
ham and cheese. And don't get me wrong, you lot in America are way ahead of the curve on that. And then the picnic was the same. I was just thinking of like, what else is there after, sandwiches? Don't get me wrong, my sandwich shop, inshallah, will be open forever and ever and ever. But like, I thought after the Sani, I didn't want to write another sandwich book, I wanted to write about something else. And it was in the first lockdown, and I just thought like everything is so freaking miserable, and like people are scared, just stuff is shit, and someone needs to spread a bit of joy. And that is what this is for. Is to spread a bit of joy around, help people exploit those opportunities for deliciousness.
You were like
more of lunch.
You were like, somebody needs to write a book that explains 10 different ways to use a rotisserie chicken that you bought from the grocery store.
Yeah. And like, do you guys get that in America in the supermarkets? Can you buy those rotisserie chickens? I honestly like that. Yeah, like the less said about the provenance of the chicken, probably the better. But nonetheless, for the errant picnicker caught, on the fly, that a baguette, you can, and all able to be bought in the same place, I might add. A baguette, a jar of mayonnaise, a lettuce, a lemon, and one of them chickens. And you have one of the greatest lunches anyone's ever had. And you're picnicking. And all you've done is been to the shop once. And you can take that on a train. Like we said, you can take that in a car. You can, arguably, you might even be able to get away with it on the aeroplane. I don't know. What are you doing? Like, oh, nothing. Excuse me. I
just keep imagining you a few minutes ago being like, this is not that kind of cookbook. Like, you want to bake your own bread, you want to make your own rotisserie chicken. I mean, that's not this. I mean,
it's not like that.
There are recipes in the book, but immediately following every recipe, there's like, or if you don't have time to do this, just buy a rotisserie chicken at the supermarket.
Exactly. And I think that it was also for me after writing, of course, I love the sandwich book, it's great. But after writing, it's much more along the lines of a kind of a conventional cookbook, relatively speaking. And after I'd written like a cookbook, I felt very strongly that really what I wanted to move on to was to write a book about eating, not necessarily just about cooking. And it's like, so of course, this is full of recipes. There's loads and loads, it's jam-packed with recipes. And throughout all the stories, there are things that, it may be casually told in a kind of imaginary way of, Ringo Starr says this and that to Muttley.
I'm sorry, did you say, you said kind of imaginary way?
All right, completely imaginary.
Where is the kind of in the...
Obviously, Ringo Starr never said that.
In the Hunter S. Thompson, Mary Berry picnic, where those two have a picnic. Where's the reality there? What's the part?
Yeah, well, there is none.
Kind of imaginary.
There is not. These picnics are, of course, entirely fantastical. But even in the context of those fantasies and stories about my heroes and what I imagine them doing, there are casual references to great ideas about how to make things more delicious. Like one of my favorite ones is there's a picnic in here dedicated to what I did for my 36th birthday party.
Yeah, well, this is that's a way of life picnic. That
is so cool. It's so boss, isn't it?
Even if you don't love McDonald's or you don't eat at McDonald's, if you eat at any fast food restaurant, if you have friends, it's a dream.
What a way to do it.
Scenario.
Yeah, and like I think it's a great example. So I don't want to make it sound like I.
Yeah, just ruin it. Give it away. Tell people.
Yeah, so I don't want to make it sound like I burn the candle at both ends too much. Oh, hello. Hi guys, my dad's here.
Oh, hello.
Oh, this is my dad. Oh, have you brought me some more wine?
I brought a little bit of wine because he deserves it.
Oh, lovely. I'm sorry, my dad being an absolute legend. And I hasten to add, it is the evening here. This is Ken and Zach and everybody.
Hello, Ken and Zach.
This is my dad, Ned.
How do you do? Welcome to England.
Yes, indeed. Cheers.
Before your dad goes, he has to give us his sausage advice.
Oh, Dada, what is your sausage advice?
if by any chance there is a sausage on the menu, Max, order it.
Woo! Legend. They and he's brought me some more wine. Isn't that so cute? So normally I live in London, but since the lockdown, I thought, like, I'm going to get out of the city and go. And the truth is, I haven't lived here with my parents for like 20 years, and I just thought, what a lovely way to get out of the city and kind of reconnect with my folks. And to be honest, it's been an absolute joy. Anyway, so I don't want to make it sound, says the guy whose dad just topped up his wine, but I don't want to make it sound like I burn the candle at both ends too much. But I often carry like little miniature bottles of booze in my coat pockets because I'm an absolute legend. And anyway, so one of my favorite things to do in the whole world is to go to McDonald's, to have McDonald's, hack my burgers in any way I choose. Like, I love a McChicken sandwich with mozzarella dippers and all the salsa in it. So you basically made like a chicken parmo, a Mackie D's chicken parmo. But my favorite moment is at the end when I go outside. I've ordered myself on leaving a vanilla milkshake and a double espresso, and I go out into the street. I tip my double espresso into my milkshake. I take my little bottle of Jameson's and I tip that in, and I stir it all around, and I made an Irish coffee milkshake. And it's like, that is a fantastic, again, a kind of metaphor of how you can take something that's already delicious and bring it together with other little things that are all delicious and make something even more delicious than it was before. Quite frankly, greater than the sum of its parts. And it's like a hard shake made out of one trip to McDonald's and one very brief trip to the 7-Eleven to get like a little miniature whiskey or something. Like, these are just such nice ways of adding a bit of fun to our lives,
And in case people are nervous, like, oh, I don't eat milkshakes or I don't like Jameson, there's an entire part of the book dedicated to how you can add booze to drinks.
To fast food drinks.
Yeah, to fast food drinks and the different combinations.
You tip a little bottle of red wine into a Coca-Cola, which really is much more delicious than it's made out to be. And like other things, like a little miniature bottle of Campari tipped into a Tropicana, you get a Mackie D's. Like, my dad, in fact, when my sister and I were little, we used to go on holiday with my mum and dad, and we'd like stand in a hotel in Italy or Spain or something. And I mean, I'm talking about Campari, so Italy, I guess, but they sell Campari everywhere. At breakfast, my dad used to order a Campari and orange juice, and at breakfast it comes and it's got that beautiful, like, sunsetty, mottled red and orange. And my dad would stir up his drink and he'd lean over the table and say to my sister, "Liquid sunshine, and people think you're drinking grapefruit juice." And it's that's an absolute legend. Liquid sunshine. In fact, there's Campari and orange ice lollies. It's one of the recipes in this, with and I think these are, like I said, I think this is every bit as much a book about eating and how to take things that you already have and just think of them a little differently. Yeah, there we go. Boom. Campari, orange juice, and creme de menthe ice lollies. Oh,
all right. So we've talked about a bunch of things that you clearly love. Mayonnaise, eggs is a big
deep
one.
Fat fryer.
Deep fat fryer. Adding booze to everything. But I want to talk about some of the things that you hate, because there is some hatred in this book.
Cheese for me.
Huh?
Anyway, no, cheese, but we'll get on to that. What were you going to say?
Well, one of the funniest recipes in your first book is the tuna melt recipe.
Oh yeah,
which is hilarious.
Dude, I got to show you that. So, and that has led to, without a doubt, my favorite Amazon review of all time. Hang on, let me find that recipe.
I mean, it's one line. You can just repeat it. The recipe is one line.
Exactly, but I've got to show you because I think it's so fun to see it in the context of the book, isn't it? Oh bloody hell, where is it? Fucking hell, you would have thought I only wrote the thing, innit? Here we go. So you're flicking through the book. There's loads of sandwich. You're going, oh, that sandwich. Oh, that sandwich looks nice. Oh, that sandwich looks nice. And then, bam, you get to this, completely blank, and it says tuna melt number 17, and it says, I'm sorry, but I don't eat much cheese, and I can't have a fish and cheese recipe in my book. Just keep making it as you already do. And there's all these Amazon reviews where people are like, I paid $20 for this book and 2 of the pages are blank. And it took me, it was like a week's argument with the publisher to persuade them to let me put 2 blank pages in the book.
Well, all right, so this brings me to a really an important question, because so you're still anti-cheese on.
I'm particularly
on
anti
seafood.
Cold cheese. I think melty. I think cheese is a wonderful thing. Like,
I mean, specifically on tuna fish or like on
fish and cheese, man. I don't care
cheese,
what
you're not into it.
That's fucking disgusting.
So let me ask you this, because and you obviously talk about some of the inspirations from your childhood, and I know how much you love putting crispy things on every sandwich, which is, I think, and
which is the bit missing, basically.
My childhood putting crispy things on sandwiches was putting Doritos or Cheetos on tuna fish sandwiches.
Oh yeah, boss.
And now, is that enough to change your? Because in a lot of ways, it's a tuna melt without the melt. I mean, you're putting cheese.
What in the context of crisps? Like anything made, if you've ground up corn, mashed it together, and deep fried it, you're all right with me, mate. And that has very much a presence in the sandwich. Like crunchy is the element of sandwiches that is always missing. Always. And people make out that like bread is crunchy, really, or that lettuce is crunchy. And it's like, no, deep fried things are crunchy. And like Cheetos are crunchy, Doritos are crunchy, gem lettuce is 90% water.
I mean, to me, if you want all that lettuce, you should just get a salad. That's what salads are.
Exactly. Get a salad and leave the room. But I mean, don't get me wrong. Like for me, the purpose of lettuce, I like most, not the ham, egg, and chips, but many of the sandwiches at my sandwich shop use shredded baby gem lettuce and chicory mixed together, like white, classic white chicory. Because I believe that they do not add any real perceivable crunch to a sandwich. But what they do is provide a kind of break in the rain. And there's freshness amongst what is traditionally quite a rich place. And another thing I don't like, is slices of tomato. Like, what the fuck are slices of tomato doing in fucking sandwiches? Like, every time you take a bite, the whole fucking lot comes out in one go, which is just ridiculous. Like when people make, sandwiches with steak, and it's like, what are you doing? Like, you're going to take a bite and bam, like a huge piece of steak comes out and 3/4 of my sandwich is now meatless. And it's like, tomatoes, like if you're going to put tomatoes in a sandwich, like blitz them up, man, mix them into mayonnaise, learn what concasse is and mix that into mayonnaise. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, don't give me no slices of tomato. Like BLT is the only exception to that rule. And that's it.
I feel like I could have gotten rid of most of my questions and just written the word preach a dozen times. And just every couple minutes just said that. And then I don't know why I put so much work into this.
I have to interrupt. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt, and I just say, I feel I'm 47 years old, and I feel finally seen about my hatred of steak sandwiches. So thank you, Max.
Rubbish. And like where I had my like mind-popping moment about that was in New Orleans. So before I opened the sandwich shop, I got on an airplane with my girlfriend and went to America to eat sandwiches because I just, I knew that you guys were quite frankly much better sandwiches than we were. And in New Orleans, I had this sandwich so roast beef for me was like a big joint of roasted beef, cooked so it's pink and kind of cut into thin slices and put in a sandwich that you get in a pub with coleslaw or something like that. And in New Orleans, I ordered a roast beef sandwich. And what I got was like stew, what I would think of as braised beef, like beef stew. And I was like, hang on, that's not roast beef. And I was just like, literally, I was sat in this sandwich shop in New Orleans and like my tiny mind just exploded. And I was like, fuck, stew in a sandwich. And that is so much better than what I thought of as roast beef that, like I said, just the whole slice comes out every time you take a bite. And it's such a shit way to make a sandwich. And it's like, it's going to be where you get that sandwich. It's going to be the place where they think they're artisan. And so they've got, A, they're using sourdough, B, they're using butter and not mayonnaise, and C, they put either steak or what English people think of as roast beef in a sandwich. And now I'm just like, drop the mic, get me the fuck out of here.
Was that your inspiration for adding the braising liquid back into the ham?
Yeah,
because in New Orleans, debris is like a thing. Like that's like a thing you get added to your sandwich.
And, like we have you guys got pret a manger in LA?
I mean, I don't know about it in LA, but we have it in the States.
Yeah. It's in the States. And so there's a sign that like the A board outside my sandwich shop that has been there since like the third day that we opened, when the cardboard box got wet, and because I didn't really have any money when I started, and the cardboard box got wet, and my friend Willie made me an A-board to go outside, and I wrote on it this thing that this woman called Lucy, who lives up the road, said on the first day we were open. And the first day we opened, she's eating her sandwich, and I go over and I say like, oh, fuck, it's our first day. Have you enjoyed your sandwich? Is it good? And she was like, it's the best sandwich I've ever had. And I was like, thank God. And she said, more fell out of my sandwich than I get in a Pret. and so I wrote that on the sign, and it's been outside ever since. And that debris, like, the ham, egg and chips, the sandwich that launched 1,000 chips, as those crisps and the meat and the piccalilli and the egg yolk fall from the sandwich, because we serve our sandwiches wrapped up in greaseproof paper, what do you call it, baking parchment or whatever it's called in the US, and that joy and the noise of the paper rustling as you kind of pick up the debris and you eat is such a wonderful way of finishing. It like brings it all to a conclusion, doesn't it? That debris. It's like in the fish and chip shop in England, they always sell these things called scraps, which is like when you've dunked the fish into the batter and then you put it in the fryer, the extra like little knobbly bits of batter that fall into the fryer that kind of sit on the edges of the fryer, that when you get just chips, you'll often be asked, would you like scraps? And that's where they like scoop up the debris from the batter and they put that on top of the chips. Also, the idea of garnishing something already deep fried with something else deep fried pleases me enormously culinarily. So all right. You're going to be dead in 6 months. You want to die in 5.5 months? Yes, please.
All right. I want to talk about, before we get to questions, I had two more. I want to talk about one sandwich from the book, and then I have one final question. But so in your first book, the whole English breakfast in a sandwich.
Yeah, in the paper. Oh, yes.
Is one of the best. Is an amazing recipe. It's basically an entire fry up between
an entire fry
bread
stacked up in a sandwich, hash browns and all.
Now you have taken that to the next level in the picnic book. I noticed this.
I have twice.
Immediately.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And I don't normally approve of scooping bread out of bread. or bagels. I
No.
hate when people do that. What's the point of
Yeah, I
getting, you have
don't.
delicious bread, a perfectly constructed sandwich, but in
Yeah.
this case, and I'll let you explain,
Yeah.
it really,
So
I'm very excited to try this
yeah,
out.
so
It's,
this is in fact it is our cover star. So what this is yeah, oh, in fact, let me show you. So I'll find the one in here. So in the sandwich book, where is it? Breakfast BLT, no, yeah, here. So in the sandwich book, there's this, the whole fry up in a sandwich, which, as you can see, is really rather large. And then that's something that, like, I once a year I treat myself to. And when I got the chance to write another book, I thought, like, how I love that sandwich so much. It brings me genuine happiness. And I thought, yeah, like, how can I do that again, but do it a bit differently and make it picnicky? Because the one from the sandwich book is not, quite frankly, very picnicky. Now, I love this thing called a shooter's sandwich. So a shooter's sandwich was originally invented as a way to turn beef Wellington into something that you could put in your pocket. And how they fix, so obviously puff pastry, mushroom duxelle, etc., they all want to run away from each other once you put them in your pocket. The shooter sandwich was invented. Take a large crusty loaf of bread, cut the top fifth of it off, hollow out the loaf of bread, cover the inside in mustard, fill it up with pate, steaks, cooked how you want, à point, whatever, and mushroom duxelle. And they would layer up the whole loaf of bread with the steaks, the mushrooms, the pate, then bang, put the lid on, wrap it up in baking parchment, wrap it up in tin foil or aluminium, whatever, and then you put it in a press, and it is pressed overnight with really genuinely heavy weights on top of it. And when you come in the morning, the whole thing is set like a terrine. And so then what you could do, bam. And then what you would do was you could cut it like a cake into slices. You could put it in your pocket. And when you were out shooting, you could eat this. And it was a beef Wellington, a shooter's sandwich for people who were out shooting pheasants or, whatever it is that people shoot. I don't know. And so I just thought, like, man, never mind the fucking steaks and stuff. This just conceptually is a brilliant idea. And, like, what a great thing for picnicking. So that was when I was like, oh my God, the full English breakfast. And so I just did exactly the same thing, where I cooked bacon, sausages, hash browns, mushrooms, boiled eggs, tomatoes, like whatever you want, man, black pudding, like, whatever tickles your fancy. And I filled up hollowed out loaves of bread with all of these goodies. I pressed it overnight, and this baby was born. And, like, it is so delicious. And it's like something else that I've said about the sandwich, why I think that the sandwich has been gastronomically underappreciated for a long time. So if you're a Michelin starred chef, right? I come to your restaurant, I eat your extremely carefully considered plate of food. On that, let's say we're using my hot, cold, sweet, sour, crunchy, soft theory, that is where deliciousness lies, right? So you're this Michelin star chef. You've made a plate of food that has hot, cold, sweet, sour, crunchy, soft on it in elements. What you have what you lack as a chef is any control over how I consume that plate of food. So I might take your brilliant idea for a dish, and I might just yam all the sweet stuff, and then I eat all the crunchy stuff, and then I eat all the sour stuff. And your idea is kind of ruined. And I'm like, well, actually, I thought that dish was a bit shit. And it's because I ate it wrong. Do you know what I mean? Whereas with a sandwich, or the sandwiches in my sandwich shop, which are built layer by layer, so that every bite contains every element and the same amount of everything. So in one of my sandwiches, every bite has hot, cold, sweet, sour, crunchy, soft. Never mind every dish. And that is why I think thought about right, the sandwich has the potential to be about as delicious as anything can be, because it's a really clever vehicle for delivering all of the things that your brain wants to perceive deliciousness in every single bite. And what I love about the full English breakfast through the sandwich is that, you know, when you've gone to the cafe to have your fry up, you're getting like every bite. You've got sausage, bacon, hash brown, black pudding, tomato, egg, ketchup, whatever it is, your condiment of choice. Every bite contains every one of those things, and that is a wonderful way to eat. And so I think again that again sums up this book, that things that seem flippant and seem a bit silly are actually really considered ideas about eating, and that how can eating be as enjoyable as possible. And like that's what this does. It helps make eating better, as well as, you know.
Let me just say thank you, because for anybody who thought maybe I was being unfair to Ken at the beginning by not calling you a genius, in 45 minutes you've proven me right. You've proven
it's not easy waking up every day. Brilliant.
How offensive the introduction was. How woefully under.
Don't screw me like that again, Ken.
Never again. Never again.
All right, should we take some questions? I feel like
please.
Looks like there's would love for you guys tuning in to ask some questions to Max or Zach.
Well, I'll ask one last question while people decide if they want to ask questions. Is your family descended from the guy who was that Halley's comet was named after?
Yes, indeed. That is
true.
Edmund Halley, who discovered Halley's comet, is my great whatever granddad.
Well,
I make sandwich. I picnic for a living. You know what I'm saying? Like,
you have truly lived up to his legacy. You have lived up to the Halley legacy.
He is currently spinning in his grave right now.
Max, I have a question. The nice, lovely actor Himesh Patel had mentioned that you are possibly one of the greatest hosts in the UK, and I wanted to just kind of pick your brain a little bit about what hospitality means to you, even in a place like a humble, grab and go, or a deli or a sandwich shop.
Yeah. So like the first thing for me is that what most people forget when they are hosting in a restaurant is that this is the hospitality trade, and that everything above all other things is about hospitality. It's not about making sure that tables are of course it's about making sure tables are turned, you know what I'm saying, but you got to run the restaurant as well. But it is about, there is fundamentally often a lack of hospitality, I think. So a great example of that, one of the classic blags in the restaurant world, one of the classic ways of squeezing more money out of your customers is bottled water. So you sit down in a restaurant and the first question you are asked is, can I get you some water, still or sparkling? And I'm like, tap. And the idea that in a restaurant, that the initial action taken by the person serving the table is fundamentally an upsell and not really a hello, really like boils my piss. And also it means that, why do we have to get into the kind of commercial side of this straight away? So in the sandwich shop, when you and this sounds silly, but I think it's a metaphor for how I feel about hospitality. So when you sit down in the sandwich shop, we have a big jug of water on the bar with big pieces of ginger in it, and like ginger in water is delicious. End of. And like once an hour, we take the ginger, we throw it away, and we put a new bit of ginger in so that it is always gingery. So when you sit down in the sandwich shop, somebody comes to your table, you sit down, you're given a menu. Here's the sandwiches, here's the drinks, bang, here's 2 glasses of ginger water. And then we piss off and leave you alone for a minute to like listen to the music, to smell the bread baking, and to, you know, to look at all the cool stuff on the wall. And in a minute, we'll come back and offer you a drink. And it is fundamental to me that even though it is only a glass of water, the first action the restaurant takes when you sit down as a customer is it gives you something.
Wow.
And then if the next question is can I order this sandwich without mayonnaise? You're like, no.
Yeah, you're like, get the fuck out.
We don't.
No, the truth
That's
is,
hospitality.
my staple line.
That's hospitality.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. We do get people who order sandwiches without mayonnaise, which does, you know, bring my blood to a boil. And you know, look, the truth is, it's your dinner. You can ruin it in any way you like. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This has been
thank you.
This has been a true pleasure.
Thank you.
Learning and listening.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm going to be in
Fantastic.
America in COVID allowing. I'm going to be in America in September and October.
Well, you'll
So
have,
Oh,
maybe
no
I could
way.
come.
you'll have
Yeah,
to come.
maybe
You'll have to come to
could come-
Smorgasburg. You'll have to come to
Yeah.
Smorgasburg.
I would love to.
I have this thing where, you know, because I'm there every single Sunday, you know, it's a
Yeah.
market with like 60
From
different
10 till
food
3.
vendors from 10, yeah. And I'm there every Sunday. And so I've eaten everything. And
Yeah.
at this point, and so what I do now is I have this thing called Smorg Hacks, where I will take one thing from one booth and another thing from another
Yes.
booth.
This is what dreams are made of.
We had a one of your McDonald's hacks reminded me of a Smorg hack I did where we have an amazing porchetta sandwich vendor, these Italian guys who do
Yeah,
traditional.
I saw that on the website.
And then we also had a mozzarella stick vendor. So one day, porchetta,
Yes.
mozzarella sticks,
And deep fried
marinara.
mozzarella.
It's, I mean, a porchetta farm.
We'll be there together, brother. We'll be
More
there
to
together.
God.
This
So,
sounds
I feel
like
I feel like we could have a good time together. Could really,
Yeah, I
very
think we will.
dangerous. Very
A large
dangerous.
lunch.
I know the backbone of this is the idea of selling this book, but I'm just looking forward to having a meal with you two. And Max, I'm so excited you're coming.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
COVID willing, in the fall.
Yeah.
And I just had a blast with this talk. The book is Max's Picnic Book. You can get it at nowservingla.com. Zach, it's always a pleasure, but today was, I think we hit the benchmark here. So Max, thank you so much.
Thank you. Namaste.
Well,
Thank you very much.
Yeah. We'll see you soon. Okay. Take care,
Okay.
everybody.
Much love. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.